Welcome to Build Order. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Jen. We explore why certain things grow in certain cities. And today we get to talk about real estate. So, what is the biggest Austin real estate story of the last decade? Well, if you haven't worked in real estate in Austin, you might think it's the Tesla Gigafactory opening, or maybe tech giants like Oracle or Google building campuses here. Something probably with cranes, concrete, and a proper press release. But if you worked anywhere near Austin real estate over the last 10 years, you know there's another answer: Nate Paul. Nate Paul's company, World Class Capital, seemed to own half the city, or at least the half with the best dirt. And that was the strange part. For a man associated with building downtown Austin, he never actually built much of anything. Paul went from being on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2016 to an FBI raid in 2019 to an indictment in 2023, all with the portfolio valued at over $1.2 billion. And as they say, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. His massive growth and decline happened in just a matter of years. Despite all of the drama, all of the alleged theft, all of the alleged inappropriate actions, he may have actually accelerated Austin's growth or delayed it, possibly both, more than any other real estate investor in Austin. We are anxiously awaiting the Nate Paul miniseries, but until then, Lauren and I will tell the tale. It all starts in the small South Texas city of Victoria. Nate Paul isn't actually Nate. His name is Nathan, and he was born to immigrant Indian parents. Dad is an OBGYN, mom was a realtor. He has been an entrepreneur all his life. He had his first DJ business at age 9, also started a tutoring business there. Then he decided to go to UT, as I'm sure his parents were thrilled about. When he was his first year in, he raised some money again from his dad and some of his dad's friends, bought his first apartment building, and flipped it at age 20 within just 90 days, and used that cash to buy 5 more properties. His business was going so well, he kept doing that, flipping properties, that he decided to ultimately drop out of UT in 2007 and launch World Class Capital Group. So at this time, just to give you a picture of Nate Paul, he was known for wearing a 3-piece suit at the age of 20, which would be pretty unusual if you think about college students today. They're like wearing jeans and sneakers and whatnot. But this guy was in a 3-piece suit. He took what he did very seriously. A lot of people said they admired his work ethic. Mm-hmm. And in 2008, of course, 2007, 2008, we had the great financial crisis. He, on the other hand, had so much cash flow because he had been flipping properties successfully that he used this cash to buy up distressed real estate. With very cheap debt, interest rates were still very low at the time, and because of the GFC, he had no competition. He said he was frequently the only offer on deals and that people would reach out to him because they knew he could come through and pay for the deal. He built his businesses by acquiring storage assets, primarily in the beginning. His first business was Great Value Storage, and he bought land in Austin, which is going to be the focus of our conversation today. So in the beginning, he was actually a very active, very successful real estate investor. He hung, as I mentioned, these big black banners all over town. You probably remember seeing them, Lauren.
Yeah, and they got pretty cheeky. So to the point where, the banner would just read another one.
Yes, the DJ Khaled reference, as everyone likes to say. But most of them would say another world-class project, or to Lauren's point, another one. And this was just all over downtown. You couldn't drive a couple blocks without seeing them.
I mean, well, actually, if we can turn to the Forbes article, because I feel like we would be remiss in not talking about that.
Yes.
It's amazing. So I didn't know until you just said it that he was on the Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2016, which, I mean, I sort of feel at this point, if anyone is ever asked to be on that list, just run.
It's nicknamed the FBI's most wanted list as well. So
yeah. And I found an article that they wrote about about Nate Paul in July 2017 called The 30-Year-Old Texas Tycoon Who's Building a Real Estate Empire. So they did a deep dive on him. And I want to read something from it because for me, it was so interesting. So they wrote, he raised funds in dozens of partnerships to do deals and kept upwards of 50% of the profits. With the $25 million he started raising from the Austin Police Retirement System in 2009. So actually they're some local money. He produced an annual, now fully realized internal return, rate of return of nearly 25% net of fees. And two things. One, apparently that return was real for the APD, but I don't understand how you can write this and not already have little, warning bells go off in your head. I mean, how incredible is that in the real estate space for someone who's just starting off to keep 50% of the profits and have a rate of return of 25%? I think a lot of people who don't know a lot about real estate might read that not bat an eye, but I mean, not that it's not impossible, just that it's improbable. And it was written very seriously in that article. So I don't know. Now, maybe a benefit of hindsight for me to say that, but for me, I read it and I was like, okay, this already feels a little weird.
Right. Well, hindsight is 2020. That's for sure. And I will say during that time, returns were insane. So it could just be
in Austin.
Well, because no one was wanting to invest in Austin at the time. And if you have someone just with a lot of charisma talking about how Austin's going to be the next Boomtown, and he was doing that. So who knows if those returns are actually real at this point? They could have been. They might not have been.
Apparently, the Austin Police Retirement System did make a return, and that may, according to Forbes, very well be the number, but they would be the only ones.
Yes, and they're an interesting one because I know you said that that they were local money investing in his company and in some of his properties. Raised $25 million, as you mentioned, but before Nate Paul, the police system had never actually invested in Austin. So I found a quote from Nate Paul where he said, "I studied your portfolio. How do you not own any assets in Austin?" Paul asked them, and he said, "It's the fastest growing city in America."
I got to give it to him. I mean, that's a wonderful sales pitch, and it's a pretty simple one-liner that worked.
Exactly. It did. And I think that worked for him over and over again.
There were some other individuals locally who invested in him from the beginning. And I might butcher the name, but the Mitt Foundation.
Yeah, the Mitt Foundation did. Exactly.
And allegedly, the Business Insider reported, so Robert F. Smith and Brian Schaith of Vista Equity Partners, which is Austin-based in part, were early backers. And so he had some locals who saw the opportunity and decided to invest. But yeah, it was a lot of external financing from other parts of the country. Although, does that make sense just because that's where the financiers are? They're not primarily located in Austin. So if you're underwriting, a debt-backed deal, you're going to have to look outside of the city. Maybe that's changing, but.
Well, Texas Teachers Retirement System is one of the largest endowments in the United States, and it is based here in Austin. We have a lot of other endowments and other pensions institutions here in Austin as well, because we've had some successful entrepreneurs here like John Mackey. He has a family office, Michael Dell's. I mean, there is capital in Austin, and not even Michael Dell, but some of the Dellionaires, as we call them. So early Dell employees are based here in Austin. He could have raised more money locally than he did.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right. Well, I do also want to reference another quote from the Forbes article that I also read that was fascinating. So he was 27 when he was named to the Forbes 30 under 30. Okay. And it's hindsight's 2020, which is why this quote is hilarious. Forbes said, "Paul, who retains 100% of the company, is not over-leveraged according to financial documents, and none of his debt is at the holding company level. Based on his holdings inside and outside the company, Forbes estimates that Paul's net worth is $800 million, so just $200 million shy of being a billionaire." Forbes continues, "If commercial real estate prices stay strong, he could be a billionaire soon.
When they write that?
This was back in 2016.
Okay.
So it's, you know, at the time he was on top of the world, right? Like he opened an office in Manhattan, actually. So World Class had expanded its footprint from an office standpoint to Manhattan's GM building. His sister, Sheena, was the COO and she officed out of there, presumably to be closer to their investors. Also, I found this funny story you might have seen as well about him in a tabloid. I don't know if you saw this. So he was extremely well networked with the rich and famous and apparently spent a lot of money on champagne at Leonardo DiCaprio's 39th birthday party.
He was living large.
He was living large. Like many people who are living large, they tend to have some skeletons in their closet. And if they're big skeletons, they ultimately do get unearthed. But before we talk about the FBI, which we already mentioned is coming, he had already been involved in scandals with employees, investors, lenders, tenants, and even a local dance club.
Oh,
pretty funny. So with employees, he owned a bar downtown called Rio. Did you ever go to Rio?
No.
Okay. Might have been slightly before your time, but it was like the hot bar for a while. They actually had a pool on the rooftop at the bar, which seemed to me like a huge liability. I never understood how they could get past that. Supposedly, he would order bottle service a lot and go there frequently with his friends. The waitresses sued him for cheating him out of over $500,000 in tips. This was settled out of court. On the investor lawsuit side, the Mitt Foundation, who was an early investor, did actually also sue him. Sounds like you read about this too. They sued him for lack of financial disclosure about the real estate investments he made with them. The judge did actually award them $10.5 million. To my knowledge, he never actually paid it. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton intervened here to try to prevent this. And then on the tenant side, one of his hospitality tenants had agreed to open a restaurant, of which he never made available to them. And then last but not least, I got to talk about Kingdom, which when I was younger and going out in Austin was this really fun EDM nightlife bar. And Paul had a reputation for purchasing these properties and then immediately locking tenants out. So they didn't even have a chance to get their equipment before he said, no, we're raising rent and you have to get out immediately, and just evicting. So I tend to agree with what you said earlier. It is beyond me how he got on the Forbes 30 under 30 with this track record.
Because this had already
happened. Yeah,
and
most
they
of
write
these.
The article.
Yes, exactly. So it's very interesting.
Maybe they didn't really know what was going on at the local level in Austin, and they just wrote. You can only speculate. I do wish I knew what they were thinking now when they write these, because I feel like it's happened enough times now and it's become enough of a joke that when someone makes one of these lists, you're just waiting for,
the shoe to drop.
Exactly. At the same time, maybe, we're being unfair. I mean, they must write dozens of these every year.
Yes.
And, we find the one that, was the white collar criminal a few years later. So, but they must, to be a fly in the wall to hear what they say about it internally. I wish I would know.
Yes, I'd be so curious. But to your point, like, you're going to swing and miss a few times and you have to keep swinging.
You do.
But all that to say, and to get back to the real estate question here.
Yeah.
How long could a guy with no major developments in progress, again, he was buying up land, and not building anything, and mounting lawsuits, as we just described, hold all of our city's real estate hostage? Not long, it turns out. His fall from grace comes when the FBI raids his office and his 9,200 square foot home in West Austin in 2019. I gotta say that because this guy was doing very well and had a beautiful downtown office. I believe it was in the Frostbank Tower for a while.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that was an interesting time.
And did you find anything about why he got raided? Because that's something that's been bugging me, which is I don't know, and I don't think anyone knows how this all started. Like, why then?
Right.
It stands to reason that multiple people, but someone influential enough went to them and said something finally for reasons we don't know.
Yes, some people, most likely. The other thing that I will say is I had a friend who worked there.
Oh, wow.
Who was a CPA, is still a CPA, but she saw how unethical and just misleading and wrong their accounting decisions were. And she said, I'm going to lose my CPA license if I stay here. And if you read his interviews about the turnover that he would have with employees who didn't last very long, Nate Paul will actually say that they didn't have good work ethic. He attacks any claims about him as, no, you're not cut out to be world class, right?
Oh, what else is he going to do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, what else is he going to do?
Right.
But the stories that friend has told me, she was so scared and she needed a job and was just like, I can't continue working here. I might lose my license and I need this job. I also just want to talk about briefly when I worked in Austin and when he raided the office, everyone in Austin real estate knew about it. Like that morning, it was the talk of the town. Everyone was going around the office in hushed whispers. Saying, Did you hear about Nate Paul?
And now, did part of the reason that bubbled up in the rumors because everyone kind of knew something was wrong and you were waiting for? Yes.
I think even if everyone didn't know something was wrong, everyone is suspicious of someone who's insanely successful, right? The more successful you are, the bigger the target on your back.
Right.
So I think a lot of people were probably ready to see someone get taken down, even if he was a great guy.
Interesting. So even if this at all, there had never been anything that was, under the table and everything had been done above board, still people were kind of, waiting for him to fail. I mean, yeah, that's very human. But
very human. Jealousy, ego, all of the above things that are very common in humanity, not just in real estate.
Yeah, because it is interesting to me. I wonder when he first broke out on the scene. I mean, I think jealousy is always a factor in these things, but there was nothing against him at that point. So people were probably just jealous, but this is real estate. This is amazing land. I mean, these are real assets. So clearly he's doing something. What's he doing? How do we replicate it? And then it's interesting to watch the tables turn. And do they turn because people are jealous and, they're happy to find something that kind of retroactively justifies their feelings of wanting someone to fail? Or is it more that they knew, like people knew, like something's wrong?
I don't think I knew something was wrong solely because my friend had worked there. So I did know something was wrong before all of this went down, but you don't really know how bad it is just based off of one friend's experience. And then from the acquisitions, the asset management side of where I was working at the time, there wasn't any indication that what he was doing was so bad. But I will say at the time, as soon as he was raided, all everyone could talk about for weeks and months was how are we going to get a hold of Nate Paul's properties, of the world-class properties. Like, we know they're going to go through foreclosure. We have to be on top of it.
Yeah, because one thing he was incredibly good at was getting access to these properties before anyone else.
That Nate Paul wasn't very good at it?
No, he was great at it.
Oh, yes,
he got
was
access
very good
to
at it.
phenomenal real estate, however he did it. And I'm sure other people would have loved to make those deals.
They would have, and certainly that was part of the mystery and charm of seeing someone so young, so successful. One other thing that helped Nate Paul out a lot as the FBI was raiding was his connection with some high-up politicians. As I mentioned earlier, the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton went above and beyond to help out Nate Paul, whereas other politicians donated his contributions to their campaigns to charity. So, Lauren, I know you did some research on Ken Paxton. I'm very curious to learn about their relationship.
I did, and I have to say I didn't know nearly. I essentially knew nothing about him except for who he was and that he was in Texas until I moved here. So it was educational for me. And I would wager that a lot of people in the country don't really know what he really did or who he really is and their relationship and how actually central Nate Paul and Ken Paxton are to the whole impeachment.
Yes.
I had no idea. So,
yes, to Ken Paxton's impeachment trial, yes.
Yes. So, so they met sometime before 2020. No one really knows how. Maybe just in the community. bumped up against each other. So the origins of their friendship are pretty unclear, and why they formed such a strong, scratch my back relationship. But basically what happened was 7 former aides to Paxton came forward to report him to the FBI. But they came forward in September 2020 for corruption and bribery. And the allegations were that Paxton helped Paul investigate and harass business rivals, delay foreclosure sales of his properties, procure confidential records on the police investigating him. So those are the allegations that were made. And in exchange, Paul allegedly, he paid to renovate Paxton's home the summer of 2020, his Tarrytown home. He pursued, he helped cover up an extramarital affair that Paxton had with a former Senate staffer from 2018 to 2020.
Oof.
He was also a donor to Paxton's campaign.
Right.
So, that's basically what happened. And then in May 2023, the Texas House of Representatives decided to impeach Paxton. There were 20 articles. Most of them were Nate Paul related, but the indictments were a bit broader than that. So Nate Paul, not Nate Paul. I mean, what I took away from the story was, I don't know what I took away from the story, because Ken Paxton's got a colorful history. I think anyone would have to say that, whether you're a supporter or not,
Yes.
in terms of things he's been accused of going back a long time. And it is unclear to me why then, maybe because of the whistleblowers, but just why did all of this happen at that moment when it was Nate Paul related, but there was securities issues as well, and just kind of other things that had happened. So, I don't know that we'll ever know.
Probably not. But he was acquitted, right? Like
And he
they
was
didn't.
acquitted.
Yeah. The Senate didn't hold him to any of these charges. He's still serving today.
Yep, he is. Yeah, and he's running for Senate, for U.S. Senate now against Corwin in the Republican primaries. So no, it didn't particularly affect his career. But I often feel that way with impeachments. They don't seem to lead to any outcomes.
They don't. And it's interesting. I almost wonder if the notoriety helps you in some unusual way. Now more people know his name in Texas because of it. And you have one side that was very upset about the whole impeachment, and now they're even more gung-ho Ken Paxton than perhaps they were before.
I think so, because it's not that these are good things to have done, but you wonder where they came from and why that moment for everything to bubble up. And, I think people feel that it was political targeting. So it almost muddies the ethical question when that sort of thing happens, because people stop caring about whether it was right or wrong. They just start caring about whether my side was targeted. And so it got mired in all of that.
Right.
But it doesn't change the fact that they did have a relationship and a bit of a, you scratch my back, I scratch yours.
So you can tell us more, Lauren, about what exactly Nate Paul did wrong. Because I know he had what, like 13 different counts against him? Something like this?
Yeah,
I think that's right.
It was a lot. Yeah. And it was interesting because the initial indictment was June 2023. And he was accused of making false statements to lending institutions to the tune of $172 million in loans across multiple funds. And just to give an example, so prosecutors alleged he was seeking a $48 million loan, and he used a counterfeited document to make it appear that he had over $18 million in a bank account, when in fact that account had less than $13,000 in it. So that's an example of what he was accused of. And then actually they came forward, prosecutors, with 4 more wire fraud charges in November 2023. And here really what they come down to is money that was supposed to be segregated for limited partnerships was not. And wasn't isolated. It was used across the board.
Okay.
So he only pleaded guilty to 1 count.
Okay. So it's wire fraud, lying to different financial institutions, and all these really added up. But at the end of the day, it was just 1.
Yeah. So he was accused of a lot of things, and he only pleaded guilty to 1, which alleged, and we can be clear about what this one is. So that he falsely claimed to hold 100% ownership of a company called Silicon Hills Campus LLC as part of a $64 million loan agreement made in 2018. And in reality, actually held just 9% interest in that company, and a California LLC held the remaining 91%. So, he used that loan apparently to buy 158 acres and multiple buildings in Northwest Austin. So that is what he pled guilty for. So that is the only charge. Everything else, he was just accused. And as you say, similar to Ken Paxton, never, found guilty or, if you will.
Right. Interesting. Yes. And that was the 3M campus, I believe, right? The Silicon Hills campus.
It may very well
it was. So it's interesting because we don't know like how much of this was actually wrongdoing, how much of this was just people being potentially jealous and upset about a young, I'll just say it, young immigrant man or son of immigrants being so successful. Like there were a lot of challenges that he faced leading to his success here in Austin, and his sentence was quite light. Did you look at his sentencing as well?
4 months home confinement, and he has the right to go back out and he's kept some of these properties. So he has the right to go back out and rebuild his real estate.
He needs to start working because he has to pay off all of the people who are now seeking damages against him. So my understanding is he's been very busy working from home. So Lauren, I do want to talk about the question, did he stall growth in Austin? So how much land and value was actually tied up and just sitting vacant?
A lot. Now, it's important to say that the self-storage portfolio wasn't in Austin. It was all over the place. But there were a lot of Austin assets that he held. So among the things I found, this isn't even comprehensive. I mean, 13 office buildings in North Austin, South Congress, as you mentioned. There was a $1.3 million square foot 3M campus that was valued at over $100 million. There was a North Austin office buildings and retail center that sold in 2023 for another $100 million. So, I mean, he had hundreds of millions of dollars of Austin real estate that he was sitting on. And where I fall on this is my inclination, just to answer that question, is sort of to say, yeah, I mean, what were you doing? You were buying all this land, sitting on it. You never developed it. And your model, aside from the self-storage business, was just to resell at a higher price. And that's what he did very successfully when he was a teenager with the first property. Right. And there's nothing inherently, I mean, I feel almost bad to say there's something inherently wrong in that. I mean, I think a lot of people house flip and do things, but maybe they make improvements or maybe they build something. And I personally feel that in a growing city like Austin, when so many people want to be here and people are anxious about the city and what it can become, it feels a little bit cynical. I don't even know if that's the right word, but to just buy some of the best land in the city and just evict the existing tenants and not do anything about it, right?
Right. Yes. Yes, that is definitely a way to create some, maybe enemies is a strong word, but some haters on the lighter side of it.
Yeah. And I philosophically, I mean, I think it raises a question of what is the point of real estate in a city? I mean, what if, just to take it to the nth conclusion for, just the framework perspectives, what if I bought all of downtown Austin, evicted everyone, and said, well, we're not doing anything with it until someone buys it from me at a higher price? I think everyone would have an uproar.
Exactly.
So now, okay, we know 100% of that's bad. 0% of that's probably unreasonable. But if your business model would theoretically take you to 100%, I mean, that's not great if your objectives are not just purely to make a return. And I think maybe where some people got involved with the story and a little bit more in an uproar about it is because he was a local. And so one would hope that he would care about Austin and, want it to grow and, be what it was before, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe that's the wrong assumption, but you do hope that when it's your hometown.
We can speculate more that probably some of these outside investors in his company they assumed the same. Again, we're speculating here, but more likely than not, that's probably what they had assumed when they invested with him, was that he would want to develop some of these key parcels.
Yeah, make them better. I mean, what do you think?
I actually think he did more good than bad for Austin.
Ooh.
Yes. He convinced a lot of people that Austin was worth investing in. Whereas, again, no one, we even had our own institutions, like the police department wasn't investing in Austin. And even Texas teachers, they did have some investments in Austin through fund vehicles, but back then they weren't even doing syndicated one-off deals here in Austin.
I see. So if it hadn't been for Nate Paul, larger investors may not have come calling. That's the
thesis,
hypothesis.
the hypothesis here.
Although I do have a counterpoint.
Oh, I do want to hear it. Yes.
Not that this is like at scale, but there were investors into Austin, external investors who came and brought capital into Austin before him. So I didn't know this, for instance. I didn't know that in 2006, Equity Office Properties bought the Frostbank Tower.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is an iconic Austin landmark and one of the first, or maybe even the first skyscraper that was talked about.
Yes.
And we've talked about it before. And
looks like an owl at night.
They're a Chicago REIT. And I have other examples as well from other external investors who came into Austin. So maybe he accelerated things, or was he just the right person who arrived at the time when Austin was poised to break out and we're giving him too much credit?
I think being someone, and I'm going to go back to the Forbes 30 under 30, like being someone who was on the map for investing in Austin largely, even though, again, his portfolio was across the U.S., I think that accelerated people's interest, other institutions' interest in investing in Austin, especially local interest from the institutions that were here that had just overlooked it because it was their backyard.
And he had a great story. He had almost the startup founder story where, I came from nothing. I quit university early.
Right. Well, not nothing. I mean, his dad was an OBGYN.
I'm just glorifying his story. See,
yes.
See what other people
many people
thinking.
did.
Okay. He came from a solidly middle class background. So
yes.
Okay. Well, that works against him, but
I doubt he
like
talked about that much.
Rags to riches,
Yes,
there's all these,
exactly.
I guess it's funny. But there are all these American stories that we tell ourselves about who's successful, and we love to give them money. And he kind of checked the boxes, even if, as I just did right now, I'm making up stuff about him, but it works to his credit. So good for him.
I mean, I'm sure he would take it. Why not? Right.
But no, but I that's one thing I love about the story is he's the perfect person. He's the kind of person that we love to give money to.
He is. Yes. And he had so much charisma. If you read any articles about people that met him, they would just say, oh, this guy is incredible and has an amazing work ethic. I want to be around him so that I can just hopefully somehow have a quarter of his work ethic just because I'm surrounding myself with people like him. So it's very interesting to see what he was able to accomplish, and potentially we don't even know. Maybe he'll still do something more in the future.
That path is not closed to him.
It's not completely closed, even though I will say, as we were talking about earlier, some of the projects he did have to sell and other people are developing them. I do want to mention on South Congress, you mentioned the 3M campus, the Silicon Hills.
Yep.
Carlin Real Estate did purchase it, and they're turning it into High Point 2022, which is a medical life sciences complex. Related companies, another large group, is planning some towers on the South Congress parcels. So talking about his portfolio is interesting in 2020, but now we want to know, okay, what is Nate Paul doing now? He still owns Paradise Cove Marina, which was one of the first purchases that he ever made. And he is fighting like heck in bankruptcy court to try to keep it. It sounds like you looked this up as well. Do you want to share what you learned? And then I'm happy to share what I learned here.
I was looking at the real estate for that one. I can understand why he would want to keep it. It's a pretty prized possession on Lake Travis. And if he is going to rebuild his empire, he needs to keep certain things. So he's fighting for that one. And he's still fighting for the IHOP.
Yes, the IHOP as well. Yeah. And just to to share a little bit about the fight for the marina, he has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy twice now to stave off creditors who are claiming they own this property.
Yeah.
He exited bankruptcy once in 2024, refiled again late 2025. As of January 2026, just a few months ago, a judge is considering a plan to refinance his debt so that the marina can exit bankruptcy again. So hopefully he may get to keep this property, again, pending the court's decision. Other than that, though, and other than the IHOP, as you mentioned, and maybe a handful of smaller deals, he doesn't have many big public-facing projects under his purview at this point, although he is technically allowed to work, primarily to pay off his creditors. And I do want to share a couple things that I found creeping on his LinkedIn, as I enjoy doing. I love a good LinkedIn creep.
What's he got going on in his LinkedIn?
What's he doing on his LinkedIn?
Definitely need to know
I know,
now.
it's so funny that he's been posting. So this one was 10 months ago. It's similar to another one that was just 2 months prior to that.
Okay.
So I'm going to read both of them. He has this screenshot of text, and in the text it says, "You better watch," with "better watch" highlighted. So you better watch those people that bounce back from everything that was meant to destroy them. Those are God's people, with God's people highlighted, and they're not meant to be played with.
Okay.
Now, this got 83 likes, 12 comments, and 1 repost.
Only 83?
Only 83. He has 15,000 roughly followers.
Okay, because I was going to say the only story that Americans like more than a rags to riches story, which is, a rebound.
Exactly.
Coming
And
back
Adam
after
Newman.
we punched you. Yeah, come on back. Yes.
Yes. So the other post was very similar to this, and it said, "Y'all better watch those people that bounce back from everything that was meant to destroy them. Those are God's people, and they're not to be played with." So he really is pushing that message, to your point, of a comeback.
Do you think he could have a comeback?
I think that in Austin, a lot of bridges have been burned, but I think he could have a comeback once he's past the period that he has to stay here in Austin if he moved to another city, because he does have some national notoriety, and certainly has connections from his experiences.
Yeah. If he could build something and sell something that he is able to keep among his portfolio and prove that he could build, and I think maybe, I don't know if everyone would give him the benefit of the doubt, but I think a lot of people would. I actually think it kind of helped him that he got embroiled in the political battle with Ken Paxton.
Yes.
Because that battle, again, I don't know where it came from all of a sudden. I mean, whistleblowers came for it, but why? With political figures, usually you assume there's some other thing going on. And so he got dragged into that, and I think some people might be like, yeah, that kind of stinks. Maybe you would have been fine if not for that. I don't know.
It's hard to say. We don't know. But also Ken Paxton he really intervened on Nate Paul's behalf, as you mentioned. So did that help or hurt Nate Paul that he did that? I think you're trying to say that it did help in the long run, but
I guess I'm saying maybe there's some parallel universe where none of this happened and he was dramatically successful. Now, I don't know how much I believe that, because I think when you're doing, if there's weird things you're doing from an accounting perspective, a lot of people are not doing that. So that's on you if that's true. But I do think that because there was a bit of a political circus around a big figure in Texas and now national politics, Ken Paxton, his name probably got dragged in the mud more than if he'd just been out of all of that and then he hadn't been part of whatever that was, because that just took on a life of its own. And I think for politicians, no publicity is bad publicity. There's just so many politicians that bounce back from all sorts of crazy stuff, and we kind of give them a pass for things that we would never give a pass for someone in our life for doing something. And I never really know where that comes from. I have my speculation, but Nate Paul does not get extended that same courtesy. He's not a public figure. He's not fighting for your movement. He's a real estate investor. So at a certain point, I mean, you kind of just got to do, I guess that's what I'm asking fundamentally is like, are you doing the real estate thing properly? Like, if you're a real estate investor, then are you a real estate investor? Like, because like from what I can tell the stories, if it's true, then you didn't even get the basics right.
Right. Or he did, and then he got over his skis and thought that he could have some sort of Ponzi scheme set up and people would never know.
Yeah, I mean, that's Elizabeth Holmes, right?
Exactly.
And Theranos, I mean, it started real, and then I never really get that but it seems to me a commonality in a lot of these stories is they're just hoping the problem will go away.
Exactly.
And then they do all the wrong things, and then you're so in the hole that you can't even see the light anymore. You're at the bottom of the hole. And you just keep doing it. I can't relate to that at all. So I don't know how that happens. But I mean, I think a lot of people would say, is anyone capable of doing that crazy stuff if they're, really their back's against the wall? Or I don't think everyone is. But maybe the kind of person who's willing to take all the crazy risks that some of the Forbes white collar criminals take would also be capable of risking everything on dubious business decisions that they hope will sort themselves out. So maybe it's personality type.
Personality type combined with ambition, combined with opportunistic timing. I think it's all of those, the fraud triangle.
The fraud. Because I have you ever heard someone tell you, I've had some people tell me that there might be a lot of basically, are all entrepreneurs lying to you? And so is it the successful ones did some things that are questionable and we'll just never know about it because they were a huge success and all worked out? And these are the people who failed. Like, to what point are you peddling promises, which someone might uncharitably consider lies if you're starting an early company? And I don't know that I agree with that personally, but I've had multiple people make that point in arguments or discussions. And I certainly think it's possible there's more people out there than we know about who have done sketchy things on their way to the top.
Right. I've seen founders of both cloaks, both colors. So I've seen some founders who have been able to outrun it and were successful, even though at the beginning they were touting that they could do a lot more than they actually could do. In their mind, I think they're selling the vision and the dream of what's possible, but their language is not reflecting that that's not possible today, even though they're saying it is.
Yeah.
And then I've seen other founders, I'm thinking of one guy in particular who is so honest and also insanely successful. So I think it just depends. Luck probably has a lot to do with it, more than we give credit.
And maybe the kind of person you are, if you're willing to engage in self-recrimination and amend or take fault. Because if you're not, there's a world where Nate Paul is possibly telling himself, well, I didn't do anything wrong.
Probably.
They found me guilty on this one random deal that I pled guilty to. The rest I was dragged through the mud because of my association with a big political figure in Texas, and tons of other people have done stuff like this, and it's all fine, and I provided returns. And these are real properties that are worth a lot.
True.
So I don't know.
And he may have had a chip on his shoulder. I implied this earlier. I think when you're the son of immigrants and you're a person of color in a very white, old white person, old white male, real estate city, as Austin has been for some time, I think that would be very difficult, and you would have to put yourself on a pedestal in order to feel like you could compete with these people. I mean, wearing a 3-piece suit every day to try to look older, just being very charismatic and very eloquent with how he was presenting himself and his vision for these properties. And even I actually have a couple of quotes from the Forbes article where he mentions some of the racism that he dealt with. One quote, he shared that a prominent local real estate owner told Paul straight up that he would not do business with him given his ethnicity.
That's terrible.
I know. And then one banker refused to lend to him because of a bad experience that she claimed to have had once with an Indian.
That's crazy.
Crazy. And I'm just saying, I've had friends of color who worked in Austin real estate also experience discrimination. So I can see how that would put a chip on your shoulder, and you'd really want, I'm going to show them, I'm going to be so successful. And if I have to cut a couple corners along the way, then I'll do it. It's not justification, but
no. Also, did he hurt anyone? Who suffered?
Well, I mean, the Mitt Foundation.
The Mitt Foundation doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good.
No.
It does not look good.
Yeah, it doesn't. Although, counterpoint, in his defense, I mean, if you went to any major large real estate investor in the country or in the world and everyone asked for their money back at the same time, no one would be able to give you your money back and all your returns. And so someone would be left holding the bag. And that happens with every bankruptcy proceeding where you invested in something with the promise of future returns. And that money is going to be used to purchase something that may not be worth exactly what it was at that time when you wrote the check. They just want their money back because they don't want to be the one left standing and everyone else got their money back. I mean, but I don't necessarily see. I'm prepared to be proven wrong, as you say. A lot of this is private, but what did he do? Where did he really fail anyone in terms of not delivering the returns that they were promised? A lot of what he pled guilty to and what they accused him of were very detailed issues around how you hold funds and lying in loan documents. And not that that's right. I'm not justifying it, but I didn't see the third piece about where people didn't make a return.
Well, we don't know because again, that's private knowledge, private documentation, private court battles, most likely. So we don't know, but given that he has done a bit of a fire sale of his properties, trying to repay people, maybe he did pay them all back. Maybe they settled for some lower amount. We're not sure. But to your point, it could have been a run on the bank being
exactly. That's a great way to put it
for a lot of this.
It was like a run on the Nate Paul Bank.
A run on the Nate Paul Bank.
But really, that's what it was.
Yes. All right. Well, I have just a final few questions that I want to go through and discuss with you.
Okay.
Was Austin lucky to have Nate Paul, or are we essentially lucky to be rid of him? What do you think?
Oh, man. I don't know. I think he was lucky to have Austin because this is the perfect place to do something like that. There's only so many geographical locations where at that moment in time when you would have wanted to start a business in your 20s, early 20s, that the real estate would be undervalued relative to the potential. And so he got in at the right time. And I think he should credit Austin, both its land and its people, for his success. So, but I don't know that, to be honest, I don't know that it matters to Austin whether he existed or not in the specific business that he was doing, because he didn't do any of it for Austin. In my opinion. And I think that's fair to say. And it's fine. He doesn't have to, but he didn't.
Well, he may have. We don't know his motives, but more likely than not, he was doing it for world-class capital. It doesn't seem that his motives
were to, benefit Austin through world-class capital, because the kind of people who do that keep tenants or try to work with them or build something new on top of the land. And then I think that Austin has the demographics and aspects of a city that no matter what, this would have happened. And now maybe it would have happened a little differently and less dramatically. That I think we might be able to say quite certainly, but I don't know that it would have mattered.
That's so interesting. I actually think the opposite. I think we needed a Nate Paul.
Okay.
We needed, whether it was him, hopefully, if we could have had someone who maybe wasn't mired in a run on the bank and all these other political and legal issues, would have been preferable. But we needed someone trying to convince people that Austin wasn't just some random, even tertiary market, right? Like secondary at best.
Yeah.
But that it was actually worth investing in, that we had a future. And he went around and convinced a lot of New York and Northeastern Connecticut capital that, hey, this is a city rather, that you should be investing in for all of these reasons. And he brought that charisma and excitement to Austin being a boomtown that, sure, like you said, maybe eventually it would have happened, but I think he brought all of that interest a lot sooner. And he convinced people like the police department here to invest in their backyard that they never would have done. And I do think that other institutions eventually followed suit because they saw the opportunities that he had been creating. I mean, as we said, there were black banners everywhere. You couldn't walk downtown or drive downtown without seeing all of these world-class projects. And there's something about the name, world-class. Like, it is cheeky, something a 20-year-old would come up with. But saying a city is world-class, means something.
I will concede that point. I think he was a pretty remarkable individual. He is. I mean, you know, one way or another. And he did do a phenomenal job convincing people to work with him. And there is maybe some world where it all worked out and some decisions weren't made. And it was,
I don't know, the accounting.
but could he have been successful if he didn't fudge the accounting and he just grew a little slower? Maybe. I don't know we don't know what decisions were made and when. And, but yeah, no, I think that's true. I guess I just think that from a demographics perspective and what's happening in the MSA, which we've talked about, and all the people coming to Round Rock and Austin, it would have happened anyway, just in a different time scale potentially. And I'm not sure that's necessarily bad because Austin has grown too much. There's too much empty office space. The vacancy rate here is still about 20%. I mean, that's pretty high now, even after COVID compared to other cities. So I think we overbuilt a little. The multifamily market's pretty soft. It's getting better, but I mean, rents are down. And there is a whole category of people in Austin who are angry that all of this capital came and changed the city and ruined the magic and, you know, which we've talked about. So they're certainly not happy. I think they would have preferred a non-world-class capital timeline. But something else you'll find funny too, just in how things are changing now. I sampled at random 15 large deals in Austin in 2025 and 2022. I just looked at the trades and saw what I could find. So just kind of a random sample. And I backfill with office deals and then some large multifamily, larger than 200 units. And it's interesting because just this random sample. So in 2022, 20% of the buyers were Austin-based companies or had a strong presence here, and about 80% of the buyers were out of state. And now last year was over 50% Austin-based, 13% Texas-based, and 42% out of state. So the market has shifted more towards local buyers who are coming in, who are more invested in Austin. And I thought that was interesting because it's another data point about how the hype period of outside capital coming in and outside people is maybe petering a little bit. Now maybe it'll come back, but we're moving more towards a local investment and model.
Right. Well, I wonder too how much of that is because we've had a lot of real estate firms open up an office here in Austin, and now they can say, oh, we have a footprint here that we're using to invest here. So that could be, I'm wondering, potentially skewing those numbers a bit just because there has been more HQs opening up in Austin.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think it could be that. And, but also some of the local real estate investors here have been pretty active.
And they're now actually focusing on Austin, whereas before they thought, no, there's no alpha, no returns to be made here in Austin. And I do think that another reason Nate Paul was good for the city is that even if I don't agree with his business practices, making that clear. Even though he was only indicted on or charged with one of his 13 indictments.
Is this an invitation for him to come speak with us?
If he wants, I'd be curious. But having those properties sit vacant is now creating an opportunity for some of these other real estate investors to come in and generate these big potential returns that if they had been developed already, maybe that 20% office vacancy would have been something like 30%, right? So
he held him off.
Maybe he held him off. Maybe it would have been worse. Again, we're just speculating here.
Because of the lawsuits and his legal troubles.
Because of all the legal troubles and not being exactly.
You're right. Yeah.
It could be worse.
That's a good point. If none of this had ever happened, then for sure would not be the IHOP anymore because that is got to be. There's another one I found. You're gonna laugh. It's right next to the Four Seasons. I don't know about it, but I guess we'll find out because it's 99 Trinity. It's literally a Laz parking lot right in the middle of the city next to the Four Seasons on the water. I mean, it's phenomenal real estate. And JLL was marketing it, and it's under contract. So I'm going to be very curious who's going to go there because it, should not be a parking lot. If I were just, have my magic wand and design the city, I would put multifamily or an office building there or both. I'd put or maybe mixed, but yeah, there's a lot of, anyway, yeah, that would have been probably developed before if it hadn't been held up by all this.
Exactly.
Or
Our metrics would have been worse.
He would have sold it to okay, this is the other funny thing about the story and just the timing and how the timing didn't work out. And there is a lesson there, but it happened 2019 they went after him, and then 2020 was COVID.
Yes.
And so then now we're in a higher interest rate market. And so his business model from before just literally is broken now.
Right.
And so it's funny because if it had never happened, well, I don't know. If he had sold some of these positions before COVID, now he would have maybe made money and returned money to his investors with a return, and it would have all been fine, and none of us would have ever been the wiser. But if none of this had happened, and in terms of the FBI going after him, and he had not sold these properties prior to 2020, then he would have been in an interesting new situation where the value of these properties has changed and interest rates have changed and his debt costs would have changed. And we would have found out one way or another, because maybe the whole thing would have collapsed.
Could have imploded.
Who knows?
We don't know.
So it's just funny because the timing around COVID too, and just how real estate has so changed in terms of interest rates also adds a little wrench in the story of there's just so many ways this could have played out.
There are so many ways. I did find out his idol was Carl Icahn, and he said that his goal was to raise evergreen capital because he never wanted to sell any of his key investments. So I don't know that he would have sold enough prior to COVID. Again, speculation. We don't know.
So, but that's so interesting because a lot of this land that he owned, there were no tenants.
Right.
So how would that have worked?
I don't know. And again, this is where the accounting comes into question too. So like, what were you doing?
This is where you can say it's not easy, but it's easy sometimes to raise money for some people, and it's really hard for them to build a business. And sometimes we give money to people who are really good at telling a story and selling, which is important. We don't give money to people who, like, maybe they're not a great salesperson and they didn't wow you with their story, but they actually know how to build something from the ground up. And those are the people that we should be funding more. Now, ideally you're both, but
Right.
never, that doesn't always happen. But I think actually, and I would go as far to say in real estate, especially if you're starting a new business, I don't think that the industry gives enough money to people who maybe just would do a really awesome job and really know what they're doing, but they're not great at selling you. Because I think that real estate responds really well to a certain kind of person pitching them. And it was kind of what you're saying about Nate Paul, like people are biased against him. There's like a certain type of person who comes and pitches to you. And they often pitch to you really dramatic numbers. Like, I want like $250 million for an emerging market, emerging fund. I mean, that's wild. Like the emerging funds in real estate are $250 million. There's no like, can I have 10 million? And so it's just interesting how the industry actually rewards bad behavior in some ways, but later on punishes you, because honestly, if you can't get the basics of real estate right, like accounting and tenants and construction, you're just not going to be successful, because it's the sort of industry where you can't lie about what you're doing. There's no, vague promises in the future. It's very real, very quickly. So there's just kind of some interesting incentives. And I think it makes it hard for people to start big businesses in real estate these days. Not so much like the individual who's just flipping homes or starting from, kind of a smaller investor.
Right. I feel like you almost need that partner. You need like the best combo of someone's a good salesperson and then someone actually knows how to run the business.
Yeah.
Otherwise I will say, when I meet a founder, real estate or otherwise, could be tech founder, and they're so charismatic and I can feel myself being drawn to their magnetism, I'm like, something's wrong. Like, I need to check myself and like look at the facts, because it's so
happens a lot.
That is something that we'll leave here today with. So do you have any other final thoughts that you want to share about Nate Paul or World Class Capital, or just development in Austin, the state of it today?
And I am personally reassured that Austin, I think, is coming back down to ground and more kind of fundamentals driven growth. I think I'm of many minds about Nate Paul. I think the thing that I'm most interested to see is what he will do with, once the 4 months are done, what he's going to do with his business and what he's going to do with his assets and how he wants to choose to run his business and live his life going forward. I think he has an opportunity, and so he should think seriously about that and, and decide. And I think Americans do like a good comeback story. So,
Yes.
And
as does Andreessen Horowitz, in case you ever watch this, Nate Paul.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Apparently.
I think they'll stay away from that one.
We'll see. They invested in Adam Newman.
They
so,
did. Yeah, maybe
mean,
they're done with real estate investment, right?
Who's to say?
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that another time. I would love to know.
I would love to know too. Let me just say that in wrapping this up, we are trying to answer the question, Lauren and I were, of did world-class developments make Austin world-class in a good way? Or did it undermine what makes Austin special? Does a city need a Nate Paul to grow? That is the ultimate question we're trying to answer here. Because Nate Paul himself, as we have said, didn't really build a whole lot here in downtown Austin. But he did something arguably more interesting, arguably more Austin, weirder. He temporarily turned Austin into an options market. He bought the right to build, leveraged the right to build, refinanced the right to build, and then eventually lost the right to build, as can happen in the options market. But once he did, other people then exercised those options, which is a strange way to shape a city, but apparently a viable world-class one. We'll see you next time.